Hello and welcome to In Business Talks 2. We are thrilled to welcome you to our bonus episode, The Friday Fix. In our bonus episode, we will be discussing a business-related subject with either one of our wonderful In Business Networking members or a fellow business owner, who will be sharing their advice, thoughts or knowledge on a particular topic.
We're your hosts, Tracy and Ian Earle, founders of In Business, a networking and business support community. We host online and face-to-face events and we'd love to meet you, so why not come along? The link to book is in the show notes. Today's guest is Rachel Surtees of the Rambling Psychotherapist. And being a great leader is not about being the most technically capable person in your organisation or group. It's about being the best at supporting the people you are charged with leading. The key to getting it right is in the quality of your relationships. Up your relational game and you'll improve your performance. Rachel supports leaders to do just this by helping them to learn how to become relational leaders. So welcome to our Friday Fix today. We have Rachel Surtees with us of the Rambling Psychotherapist. Or who is the Rambling Psychotherapist?
I am indeed. That's my alter ego.
Welcome.
Welcome. Good to have you with us today, Rachel.
Hi, guys.
I suppose we should start by asking you to tell us a little bit about what you do, Rachel.
Okay, so the name is in the title, I guess. You know, it gives it away a little bit, doesn't it? I'm a psychotherapist, so I work with people one-to-one to support them just to get through challenges in life, I guess, really. But the reason that I'm here with you guys today is because one of my biggest passions is supporting people in leadership positions. So I specialise in leadership development, and I do that by helping leaders to understand better how they themselves relate to the people around them, how people relate to them, and how that impacts their work.
Right, right.
So yeah, I specialise in leadership development.
Oh, God, that sounds interesting.
And you do this online, or the rambling bit is actually where you go
you
out.
Ramble.
Yeah, you don't just ramble on it.
Some people would tell you that I talk too much. Don't listen to them, the naysayers. No, ultimately, so I predominantly do my one-to-one work in an outdoor setting. I do work online as well, but there is something to be gained working outdoors in nature that you just can't replicate either in a room or on a Zoom link, you know. So we not only do we go out and spend time in nature, which is great for your mental health, great for your fitness levels and so on and so forth, but we also make active use of the environment as well to support us in our growth and development.
Right. Do you find it helps people relax more as well? If do they open up more if they're outside wandering along and chatting than rather than just on a screen? Is there?
I think it depends on the person ultimately. So anybody who would feel more shut down in that environment is very unlikely to come to me for therapy or for any leadership development support.
Yeah.
But yeah, some people would feel a little bit more anxious and a bit more exposed in that outdoor environment because it's not enclosed, it's not private, it's not confidential.
Yeah.
Whereas some people feel much more at ease, kind of out walking side by side, so there's not that kind of like face to face intense contact. Yeah, I always said that if I ever needed to have a conversation with my kids, it was either in the car driving so they couldn't escape, or whilst I was out walking.
Yeah.
It diffuses.
It's not confrontational somehow, is it? If you're walking along side by side, like you say, it's different.
Yeah. Exactly.
So I think you've got a quote for us that we're going to discuss, aren't we, today?
Yeah, you spotted something recently, didn't you? And that was interesting.
Yeah, it was a couple of months back. I was reading an article in Forbes that basically proclaimed that 70% of employees say that their manager is more impactful on their mental health than either a doctor or a therapist. If not more impactful than their partner.
Wow.
It's a staggering statistic, isn't it?
Yeah. What was that? Is that surprising to you, or would you say that sounds about right? What you thought?
Well, I think at first, when I first read it, I went, really?
Yeah.
Really? Are you sure? Then I started to think about it a little bit, and it sort of makes a lot of sense, really. You know, we spend a lot of time at work, and our managers hold a certain amount of power over us, I guess. You know, we are there to do a job, and they are the ones that direct us to do that. They are the ones that support us or don't support us in certain circumstances. So it sort of makes a lot of sense that actually, you know, when we spend 2/3 of our life at work, that they would be as impactful as our nearest and dearest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And what tends to be the sort of common, is there a common theme when people have issues with their boss or whatever? Is it do you notice the same sort of things, or is it depending on the person? Is it totally varied?
I think so. When people come to me and start talking about I'm having issues with my manager at work, it tends to be that people feel unsupported or not heard or undervalued.
Yeah.
It's not always entirely the fault of the manager, if I'm wholeheartedly honest. With any relationship, the dynamics that play out in them are co-created. It's not always 50-50, you know, there's no one person at fault usually. There's often certain things that both of you bring to the dynamic that will create what actually plays out. So an example is I frequently get people saying things like, oh, my boss wants me to do too much, and I don't feel like I can say no because they're so stressed and under pressure themselves.
Right.
You know, so, you know, the boss is bringing some offloading and poor boundaries potentially around that, and not modelling well that actually you have to hold your own boundaries. So the boss might be, the manager might be working all hours God sends because they're feeling under pressure themselves, saying, no, I'm not going to do that. So that leaves the employee feeling a little kind of like, oh my gosh, this is what I need to do as well. But also the employee is not going, actually, my time's precious and I'm not willing to do what you do, you know, for varying reasons. Some people might feel that their job would be under threat if they did that. Some people are people pleasers. You know, there's all sorts of reasons that people don't feel that they can hold those boundaries necessarily.
I think a lot of the time as well, particularly from managers and things, sometimes they believe they're delegating. They always realize they can be putting people under a lot of pressure to do something. I've seen instances in the past where I've worked where they consider, oh, we're just delegating, but you think, well, no, you're just passing on a lot of rubbish that you don't want to do, basically. But instead of doing it in the right way, I think I've seen before where, you know, it can be, you know, called delegating, but it's not. It's just passing the buck or passing off something that you don't particularly want to do. So
so again, like in that circumstance, it's possible that you were viewing it that way because of the way that the person was delivering.
You know,
or because of the way that you have observed them behaving. You know, there's all sorts of things that there's lots of stuff that is unspoken in relationships. And when we don't speak about things, when things are not like clear and in front of us and actually communicated, we're left with a bit of a void. And into that void, we tend to chuck our old historical experiences, and we never put ones in there. We never ever put the good experiences in there. We always expect the worst. It's part of the reason that humans are as successful as they are as a species. It's part of our survival strategy is that we anticipate the worst so that we will survive well.
I suppose it makes sense.
So if the good stuff comes along, it's a bonus.
And we don't always spot it, I suppose.
Exactly. It causes all sorts of havoc in relationships, unfortunately. So, you know, clear communication is really, really, really important in relationships, especially so in work relationships.
What do you think? I was
going to say, do do you coach the employee or the manager, or do you do both?
I actually work with both, but I would never work with an employee and a manager that were having issues. Because that's a conflict of interest. I can't be. So yeah, I wouldn't do ostensibly what is couples work for employee and manager. But I do work for both.
Right. And do you predominantly do one more than the other? Are you working more with managers and leaders rather than individuals, or?
It's probably about 50-50 these days. So I do a lot of individual work with just people who are coming to me for general support, actually, and sometimes work will come into that. Like ultimately, what people come to me to talk about is issues with relating. So relating generally, so rather than say issues with relationships, because people often take that to mean romantic relationships. It's issues with relating, because the way that we relate generally is from a certain blueprint that we've created throughout our lives. And that blueprint informs how we relate in all of our relationships, be those work ones or personal ones. It informs how we relate in general. So work will often come up in my individual work with people who come to me. And then I do get obviously people who are in leadership positions accessing support as well. And I also work with organisations as well to support their managers.
I think often managers and people get promoted and they might be brilliant at what they do, but their people skills, shall we say, can often lead a lot to be desired. Because obviously, having never led someone before, you might be superb at what you do, but when you get to, I know because I've experienced this myself, when you get to run a team, the dynamics are different and difficult, and everybody's,
something that not a lot of people necessarily understand is that actually things will change. So you may have gone from being in a team of people that you know really well and get on with, but then actually when you're promoted into that leadership position, something shifts in the dynamics. You are viewed differently, and that's sort of understandable, isn't it? Because you're in a position of power, and suddenly you will be related to in a different way, because all people's stuff will come out to play. So if people have issues with people in authority positions, if people are fearful of people in authority positions, if people are people pleasers to people who are in authority positions, all that stuff will start suddenly playing out in relationships that you've never experienced before.
Yeah.
It can be quite challenging.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, no, I've had that t-shirt, so I know what it's like. when people were your friends as the team, and then suddenly they're not quite your friends anymore, if that makes sense. There are differences. It is a weird experience, I must admit.
Absolutely. And I think one of my biggest bugbears that I have is that people are promoted into these positions because they are exceptional at what they do quite often. You know, they're very good technical experts. So they know the job inside out quite frequently. They may even have really good people skills generally as well. But what they're not taught to do is work out how that then relates to running a team. And that if you're lucky, your organisation will pay for you to do some leadership development. But classic leadership development doesn't go into the hows and the whys and the ways in which you need to change and develop and get to know yourself more thoroughly in order to actually inhabit that leadership position more effectively.
Yeah. So without giving any secrets away, then, if, for example, I've a newly promoted leader in my company, is there and we brought you on board, is there a sort of process that you go through to, is there a step process that you go through with these people? How does it work? Obviously, without giving your secrets away, Rachel.
Unfortunately, it isn't a stepped process.
Right.
Each person who comes to see me is unique as an individual. So there's a process of getting to know each other and getting to know what the person feels they struggle with the most. And beyond that, we then delve into how we're going to actually fix those problems for them. We look at what's underneath the problems, what is in their kind of unconscious belief systems. We look at making those unconscious beliefs conscious, so that people have more choice about how they relate to the world. We look at giving them support systems as well. So giving them the support that they actually need in order to make those changes, because it's all well and good saying to somebody, you've got this unconscious belief that this, and you just need to change it, but it's actually not that easy.
Yeah.
Because our unconscious beliefs that limit us for a reason is because they've supported our survival.
Yeah.
So what you're actually asking people to do is change their survival tactics, and that's an easy job when you've got tried and tested survival tactics that have worked for your entire life. So you need support to change those as well. And yeah, it's a very bespoke service. So even work with, because I do work in groups as well. I don't just do individual work. Even when I work with groups, I look at what is coming up amongst the group as well. And we work with the stuff that actually comes up in relationship in the group, rather than having, I guess, a set course for people to do.
Yeah. And from your experience, you mentioned people struggle with different things. Is there sort of something that stands out as people tend to struggle with this the most? So you've just been promoted. Is there something that's really common?
So people often get bored of hearing me. I think they get bored of hearing me. Limiting belief. Who knows? I suspect, because I bang on about it so much, people will go, oh, here she goes again. She's talking about stories.
Mm-hmm.
Stories make the world go around.
Yeah.
And as I was saying earlier, where there's a void in communication, where things are not crystal clear between people, we end up with this void in between us that we chuck things into. And what we chuck into it is stories.
Mm-hmm.
And the majority of the time, people are not conscious of what their stories are that they're putting in there. And they believe that what they are thinking and feeling is the truth of the matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And most of the time, it's not. And even if it's close to approximating what the truth of the matter is, it's never really accurate, unfortunately. So we might have a good working theory, but it doesn't necessarily make it accurate. So one of the biggest things that I do with people is making their unconscious stories conscious.
Right. And how do you do that? Do you have a sort of oh, again, I don't want you to give anything away here, but what sort of techniques do you use for that? How do you flip it so people are a bit more conscious about their unconscious beliefs? It is just
ultimately digging into the way that people relate to each other. So people will come to me and talk about exchanges they've had with people in the workplace. And I'll say, okay, so how did that make you feel? Or this made me feel like this, and I thought that. And I'll go, okay, why did you think that? And does this feel familiar to you? Where does that come from? Those are the sort of questions that I ask people. It's just, it unfolds in our relationship. Ultimately, it's not a technique as such. It's not a specific set of questions that I ask that help people unearth things. Actually, this stuff unfolds in relationship because it's formed in relationship.
Yeah. Do you need to work with some people longer than you work with others? You generally find, after 6 weeks,
they're better. They're getting there.
It really does depend on what we're talking about. So a lot of the psychotherapy work that I do is long-term psychotherapy work. Not always. I do short-term work as well. But a lot of the stuff that people come to me for is not easily resolvable in short-term work. We might be able to do an aspect of it in short-term, but it doesn't cover the whole of what people are coming to me for. Psychotherapy, I would say, it tends to be long-term work, and how long is a piece of string, We just don't know. For some people, they might be with me for 6 months. So far, the longest person that I've had with me has been 5 years. So
Right.
it really does depend on what's going on and what they've got to deal with, how deep the problems go, and how open they are to change.
Yeah.
And not resistant to as well. With the leadership stuff, it tends to be shorter term. Again, I don't like to put a set time on it. Usually I'll ask people to do at least 6 sessions with me, because this stuff, it's born in relationship and resolved in relationship. So, one session is not a relationship. So we might be able to get somewhere in one session. In fact, I've got testimonials from people where I've done a one-off session with them, and they've gone, gosh, wow, I didn't know that about myself. That's amazing. I can go and make changes, and that's been enough for them.
Yeah.
So we can get somewhere in one session, but is that going to support you long term? Probably not. There will probably be more things, and a bit like an onion that's got layers, more depths that you can go to on the same issue as well.
Yeah.
So I usually ask people to work with me for at least 6 sessions.
And do people have, I think you touched upon it there, but do people have aha moments when they've been working with you and then suddenly the penny drops? Oh yeah, I've been doing this right. Do they have those moments of clarity?
Absolutely. One of the most recent ones, without betraying any confidence.
Yes.
Along those lines, obviously, was somebody said to me, I thought I'd best let you know this in advance, because I didn't want to drop it on you when I arrived. And I'd already thanked them for letting me know in advance and told them it was useful and so on and so forth. And they came into the session, said the same thing again. And I said, I can really hear you looking after me there, but I feel like I'm quite well resourced and I don't need you to. And they had a real moment of going, oh, I do that, don't I? I look after the other person, even though they might not need me to. Yeah. So, they recognize how much of their energy was tied up in looking after people.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. What sort of, do you have any sort of standout moments when something's gone really, I mean, you just mentioned something there, but when something's gone really, really well and you've turned somebody from whatever into a whatever, does that make sense? Where they've gone from like one extreme, not to an extreme, but you know what I mean, from one place to another place.
Yeah, I one of the standout moments that I really got, I really recognised for myself how powerful this stuff was. So it was before I was officially doing leadership development, and I was just helping out a friend of a friend, actually. I'd been told that they were having problems at work. They were in a leadership position. They were having problems at work with their relationships, because obviously I've got quite a lot of psychological knowledge. And I can talk to people in those terms and help them understand what might be going on in relationship. This friend had said, would you be willing to help them out? And I said, yeah, absolutely. Happy to have a chat. Let's set an hour aside on Zoom. And this person went from totally not understanding why there was an issue, couldn't in their mind, couldn't be doing more to support the individual that was making complaints. It was at the point of a grievance being submitted to HR in the company, and they really just could not understand what was going on. So we dug into what was going on for the other person. We dug into what was going on for them. We dug into what they might be bringing to the table, and what they might be bringing that was helping co-create the dynamic.
Right.
And they took their learning about themselves in relationship back into the relationship. We also talked a little bit about different ways of relating. So this person was definitely a doer. So when the person who had lodged the grievance was saying, I feel this, the person who was the manager was saying, right, well, we need to do this, 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 and this then. When the other person just wanted to be acknowledged in their feeling.
Right.
So
we tried to come up with a solution for something that wasn't really.
We talked about different ways of relating to the world, and actually that people who are feelers need to be felt with. Otherwise, they don't feel like they've been heard. They don't feel supported. They don't feel like they've been heard. People doers need to be done with. People who are thinkers need to be thought with.
Yeah.
So they dug into those sorts of things. They took that new learning back into the relationship. They had more conversation and the grievance was dropped.
Right. Oh, wow. So that's a nice success story then, isn't it?
After one session, which I think is miraculous. I looked at it myself and went, gosh, this stuff's powerful.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Is there anything, Rachel, we should have asked you think and we haven't asked you that might be really interesting?
I honestly cannot think of anything off the top of my head, if I'm wholeheartedly honest. I guess there's so many things that we could touch into about different aspects of things that I cover with people. So I talk about things like stories, projection. I talk about attachment theory. That plays out in business relationships. I talk about things like trauma as well, and how that shows its face, and how being trauma informed is really important in your work in leadership. You can never quite know what you might be triggering in somebody else.
Yeah. So what would you say you help leaders do then? What would you think? What do you actually? Is it you help them with their empathy? With that? What is it that you help them? You know, where do they get to?
I help them up their relational game, is what I do. What I tend to find is that people are pretty darn good at empathy for the most part. Some people aren't. Some people need a little bit of support with that stuff. Actually, people are, generally speaking, are quite good at empathy for the most part. And especially so, I find people that get put into leadership positions. So any organisation that are promoting people into that position, especially nowadays, tend to be on the lookout for people's relatability and their empathy skills, you know, their ability to actually get into somebody else's shoes and experience and understand what experience they might be having. But I tend to find that empathy is not lacking. What is what people do with their empathy beyond that. So I ran a little 45-minute online, I guess it was a workshop a few weeks ago about the pitfalls of an empathic leadership approach. Because what people tend to do when they feel empathic is they want to fix things for people. So, you know, we did a whole piece on the drama triangle and how when people feel empathic, when people can resonate with what other people are saying, they feel the need to support them in some way. And that then means that they feel the need to go off and fix a problem, or to support somebody with extra knowledge, or to mediate on somebody's behalf, or, you know, whatever that might be. And in actual fact, it's not necessarily their responsibility to do that. So empathy and an ability to be empathic with somebody and say, gosh, I can really understand your predicament there, is really important in a leadership position. But then jumping to the solutions is not.
No.
Right. Yeah. So there is a difference, isn't there? Yeah, there's a difference. Yeah.
So what? Again, if listeners want to go away with just a really simple takeaway, being empathic. So somebody comes to you and tells you that they're having issues at home because their children are having problems at school and the mind's not on work 100% and they're needing some extra time off, and so on and so forth. A lot of people would jump into the position of saying, okay, you just take whatever time you need, regardless of what their need is, regardless of what the business's need is, regardless of what, you know, what they don't do is ask the question, what do you feel like you need in this situation? What do you feel like we can provide? And we will then see whether or not we are resourced enough to give you it.
Yeah.
You know, that stuff, it tends not to.
Doesn't happen, does it? I suppose people jump straight in. It tends
not to happen.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So if anyone would like to hear more about you, Rachel, you know, and
work with you,
even have a chat with you, then
that would
how
be
can
nice.
people get in touch?
Yeah. So you can find out on my website about my one-to-one therapy sessions. There is a little bit about leadership on there at the moment. There is more to come. That is www.ramblingpsychotherapist.co.uk. You can email me at rachel@ramblingpsychotherapist.co.uk, and you can find me as Rachel Surtees on LinkedIn as well if you want to give me a follow on LinkedIn and see some hints and tips about leadership and some of my ramblings about stories.
Right.
They're all on there.
Well, we'll put those in the show notes so that people can click through and find you straight away.
No, thank you very much. It's been an interesting chat. I've enjoyed it. It's been good.
Yeah.
Find out a bit more what you do.
Thank you ever so much for having me, and apologies about the tech flaws.
No, it happens all the time. Tech's a wonderful thing when it works. Yeah, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
Thanks for joining us
Thank
today,
you.
Rachel.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thanks, guys.
We're almost at the end of this week's show, and just as a reminder before we go, don't forget to book your place at one of our online networking events where you can meet some great business owners and build those business relationships. We also do face-to-face networking as well, so if you're in the Leeds, Harrogate or York area, then why not come along to one of our meetings? It would be great to meet you. And remember, as we always say, the best business comes from the best relationships.
We'd also like to tell you about our books, which are available on Amazon. How to Improve Your Business Networking Skills, 52 Tips to Help You With Your Networking. Our Notably Networking One-to-One Networking Notebook, a place to keep all the notes from those follow-up one-to-ones. And last but not least, our 90 Days to Your Success Journal, where you can plan, set and plot the actions you will take to achieve your goals.
Thank you so much for joining us this week on In Business Talks 2 Friday Fix. We hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have, all we ask is that you simply tell a friend about the show. And please follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. We'd really appreciate it.
Until next time, this is Ian and Tracy, and together
we are in business.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.